अरे सेव मेहरा जी छा गए।
बचा लेना।
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग्स से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Take a close look at this part of the map of the world, or this part of the map of the world pertaining to a section of Indian Ocean. It looks quite empty, this area, but as we enlarge it, which we will do on our screen, when we enlarge it you will see some islands conjure up. Now the main island, the main area of interest, place that we know about a lot is Mauritius. Mauritius is a sovereign nation of just about 1.2 million people, total of about 12 lakhs people. That's like a mid-sized town in India. And of this 1.2 million, about 67% is of Indian origin, or Indo-Mauritians as you might call them. Then about 25% are Mauritian Creoles, and maybe 2 or 3% of Chinese origin and others. Nearly 50% of the population is Hindu. But a sizable island, and it has a bunch of island properties within almost 1,500, 1,800 kilometer periphery. Some of those islands belong to it formally, even now they are part of Mauritius. Some used to be part of Mauritius. Mauritius claims them now, but those are called British Indian Ocean Territories, BIOT. Sometimes you get emails, particularly from tech companies, where the domain is such and such at .biot. So that is British Indian Ocean Territories. These are mainly islands in what is called as the Chagosian Archipelago, Chagos Islands. We've talked about this in Cut The Clutter in the past, because Mauritius wants its islands back from Britain, and while they've had judgments of International Court of Justice, a resolution of UN General Assembly, judgments of British courts to return these to Mauritius, that has not happened. Importantly, one of the islands in this Chagosian archipelago is Diego Garcia, which is 44 square kilometers, where Americans, since the late 60s, they started building their big naval and air base, and early 70s that became a full-fledged base. So that is the American and the American allied forces main foothold in Indian Ocean, way in the south in Indian Ocean, in a vast emptiness. In fact, it's from there that the Americans carried out major operations in the Gulf War, both the Gulf Wars and also in Afghan War, because they also positioned their big bombers, P-52s, nuclear capable aircraft, nuclear capable ships and submarines come and halt there, maintain, refuel, etc., etc. So I'm giving you this background so we understand the strategic context of what we are talking about. You know what? Throw in Indian Ocean, China, India, America, a few islands, a few remote islands, the name of a company called Huawei, some submarine cables, and what you have is a perfect plot for a thriller. Now, some kind of a thriller is playing out right now in Mauritius, in which India is also involved, or India features centrally. So what happened in Mauritius is, if you again look at the map of Mauritius, Mauritius, as I told you, has a bunch of islands. One of those island locations is, I don't know if I pronounce it right, but Baie-du-Jacotet. You can read the spellings on the screen and you can figure out the pronunciation, because Mauritius, this part of the world, is very interesting and has a very complex history. So these have been colonized over the centuries by different seafaring nationalities. So they've been colonized by the Portuguese to begin with, as many of these places were in Asia and Africa, then by the Dutch, then by the French, and finally by the British. So this island that I mentioned to you, Baie-du-Jacotet, that is where the Mauritians have a kind of nodal point where internet cables cross. Now, to understand this, I am taking a map and I am using that map courtesy submarinecablemap.com, and we are allowed to use this free, so thank you very much. So if you look at this cable, you can see that this cable is passing through this point near Mauritius. Near Mauritius means 700 kilometers in an empty ocean is not that far. Plus, this is where Mauritius's own internet connections also come. So Mauritius's entire internet connectivity connects with the world at this nodal point at this place. The area where this internet station is located is a prohibited zone in Mauritius for obvious reasons. Now, this is where a big major international cable passes. That cable, submarine cable, is called SAFE. SAFE stands for South Africa Far East. So if you see the map of this submarine cable, one part comes from Malaysia, one part is coming from India in Cochin, and then it's going down, it's connecting to this point. From there, its branch goes to Mauritius. That branch was not part of the original SAFE cable, and thereby lies a story I will tell you. A branch goes to Mauritius, that's about 700 kilometers, and through that branch cable, Mauritius is connected to internet to the rest of the world. Now, this cable called SAFE, this then goes up to South Africa. Again, if you see, it is landing in South Africa, somewhere around Durban and Cape Town, and so then it covers South Africa and a lot of Africa. Now, while this has 1 foot, 1 route in India, in Kochi, a lot of the ingredients or parts or sections of this submarine cable project. What is a submarine cable? Submarine cable is a data highway. If data is the new gold, data is also the new set of secrets. It's also the new intelligence asset. So a lot of these components, etc., have come from Huawei. This is not fully a Huawei cable, but a lot of the components have come from Huawei. Now, what happened? Where does Huawei become a bigger story? In 2015-16, it so happened that the Chinese began to focus big time on Mauritius. Mauritius has had a strong Indian influence, so strong in fact that Mauritius's national security advisor has always been an retired Indian army or intelligence officer on secondment. So the current NSA of Mauritius actually is a former RAW officer, Kumaresan Ilango. He's located there and he looks after, besides everything else, also the elected government security, the Prime Minister's security. That's one of the major unwritten briefs of the NSA of Mauritius, who's always taken on secondment from India. Now the Chinese, for obvious reasons, got interested in Mauritius, and the Chinese offered to Mauritius, they'll build a cable from Port Louis, which is the capital of Mauritius, to this point, this transit point, this submarine cable transit point in this other island. That is this point called Baie-du-Jacotet. So they built this cable. Because that cable got built and it got linked to that SAFE cable, SAFE cable, that got India worried. And that got the rest of the world, which does not count China as its trusted friend, it got them also all worried. Now, in the same period, the Chinese had built a network of submarine cables around the world. In most of these projects, Huawei was involved. So one of these cables, for example, my colleague and our national security editor Praveen Swami tells me, is called Peace Cable. That's the cable where China connects with all of Africa through Europe. So China has that cable already. Then the Australians tried to build a cable. They tried to build a cable. Again, because Huawei, etc. were getting involved, the Americans vetoed it. So the current strategic warfare in the world is not just Army, Navy, Air Force. It's also submarine, but not as in submarines that move. It's also submarine cables that sit there, because ultimately everything is about data and information. So in that part of the world which feels threatened by China, which is a lot of the world, including India, this causes immediate concern. Now, the Chinese were able to get into Mauritius or acquire a foothold simply because at that point the Mauritians were disillusioned with the Western world. The Mauritians were saying, look, we have all these orders from various courts in your world, ICJ, UN General Assembly. You are not giving back our Chagos Island group, archipelago. You are not letting old Chagosians to go back to their native lands. At least, even if you want to continue using Diego Garcia, let us have sovereignty over Diego Garcia. We'll lease it to you. After, look at Djibouti. Look at Djibouti. If you go right up there at the other end of Indian Ocean, that is the entry point into Red Sea, and from Red Sea into the Persian Gulf or Arabian Gulf and Indian Ocean. Djibouti actually leases its land, its valuable, strategically valuable land, to China, to the Americans, to the Saudis. They can all build bases there. So Mauritius's view is that, okay, you can continue using Diego Garcia, but once you accept our sovereignty, you will at least pay us a sizable rent for it, which for a small population will be a lot of money. Now the Americans and the British have been bloody minded with all that. As I told you earlier, these are British territories, and these did not become British territories without a purpose. These became British territories because 1965, once the British realized that Mauritius and Seychelles were going to have to be given independence, they took out some of these territories and they constituted them as British Indian Ocean territories, because they did not want these two countries to have ownership of these very strategically valuable islands. And then they gave away or leased Diego Garcia to the Americans, because after all, they are part of the same alliance. So you might ask me that deal Mauritius is offering is not unfair to America and Britain, that give us sovereignty over Diego Garcia and we lease it back to you for a payment. So why can't you pay? You are big rich countries. The excuse that the Americans are using is that Mauritius is a signatory with other African countries, in fact 94 African countries, to an African nuclear weapons free zone treaty, what is also called as the Palindaba Treaty. I am showing you this visual of the map of Africa and of the states who are signatories to this. This map is from the website of the UN. And the Americans say that because Mauritius is committed under this treaty not to allow any nuclear weapons on its soil, if Diego Garcia becomes its sovereign soil, then tomorrow there might be restrictions on American nuclear weapon carrying vessels or aircraft or submarines to dock there or to land there or park there. Now, if you want to believe it, you can believe it. If you ask me, I think I have heard better excuses. So that is where this is rooted. So Chinese thought they were countering it. So Chinese came in, and as usual, they used their money power and they used their corporations, which, as we have seen in all these presentations by MI5 chief and FBI chief in particular, these work very closely with the Chinese government. So first of all, they came and laid this cable for the Mauritians. Mauritians would say thank you very much. And then they offered a completely unsolicited Chinese Eximbank loan of $350 million to do what? To set up 4,000 cameras with face recognition software, just the kind that they have in parts of China, in their cities in China and Hong Kong now, right? Why does Mauritius need that? Mauritius is a very safe place and a very small population, as I told you. So they launched something called a Safe Cities program in Mauritius. This is a program that the Chinese have launched and funded in 73 cities in Africa. Safe Cities program. What this means is you have these cameras with facial recognition, with traffic pattern recognition, everything, and it all goes through a software into a database, and Chinese have access to all of this, and that's the way, that is one of the methods through which they have expanded their foothold in Africa. Now there have been various issues with this. India has got worried about this, and it's only lately that India has begun to respond to this in some way or the other. Now, India and Mauritius have a very special security relationship. I mentioned to you about the NSA of Mauritius being from India, but also there is the big island of Agalega, which is again about 700 to 800 kilometers away from Mauritian mainland. There, India is developing, as part of military assistance, infrastructure assistance, something that loosely some people in Indian media, and I would say a little bit recklessly, call an Indian base in the Indian Ocean, but it's an Indian foothold in the Indian Ocean, which is very valuable for India, for Mauritius, and also for other members of the Quad. So what happened in this case was, once it came out that this Mauritian cable had joined this safe cable, first of all, this meant that the Chinese now had access to all the data going out of Mauritius, all the internet communication out of Mauritius. And also because their cable had now connected with the safe cable in this place, they could also extract data, they could also vacuum clean data from the larger safe cable. So India got worried, other countries also got worried. So the government of Pravind Jugnauth, the Prime Minister of Mauritius gets a bit confusing because the Prime Minister seemed to be alternating between a Jugnauth and a Ram Ghulam. So Pravind Jugnauth, he and Prime Minister Modi had a conversation, after which it was decided that a team of Indian intelligence people, that is probably RAW, more likely NTRO, they would go and check out this place, at this place Baie-du-Jacotet, to see if the security was all right, or maybe even to see if they could also start vacuum cleaning data going on that cable, because you can do to the Chinese what the Chinese do to them. So this team was sent from India, and then something happened on June 30. On June 30, a gentleman called Sherry Singh, who happens to be the CEO of Mauritius Telecom, he resigned dramatically, and he said he was resigning because he would not allow anything that was against his conscience to happen. And then he gave a string of interviews to Mauritian media saying that he was under pressure, he had been put under pressure to allow some Indian technical experts, which is a cover for intelligence people, intelligence tech experts, to go to this place, Baie-du-Jacotet, and plant their own devices there to sniff out data and information. As he made that statement, stuff hit the fan in Mauritius, the opposition got angry. Within a week, the opposition demanded the resignation of the Prime Minister. They accused the Prime Minister of high treason. They said he must go. He sold away Mauritius's security interest to somebody. And it so happens that they did not say that India was involved. It was the Prime Minister himself who said, he made a statement in Parliament and he said, listen, it's very embarrassing. I have to now go and meet Mr. Modi. This has come out just on the eve of my visit to India. What will I tell him? So in his statement, he exactly said, quote, there was a security issue and it was necessary to do this survey in Mauritius. I have personally approached Shri Narendra Modi to send a competent team for this survey. In Mauritius, we do not have the technicians for this survey, but even if we had them, we would still have preferred to go for this Indian team of techies. Now, what the Sherry Singh's revelations have done, they embarrassed his Prime Minister, and obviously the opposition came out and the anti-India lobby came out. The Prime Minister has also said that you guys are indulging in India bashing, this is unfair, etc. And he said that all we have done is we got this team there to survey if there were any security lapses or security vulnerabilities. But his opposition doesn't believe it was just that. Sherry Singh has been saying that the Indian side sniffed out whatever they wanted to. The leader of the opposition, who is a former Prime Minister, he has said, and I quote him, this is to enable sniffing, interception, monitoring or recording of internet traffic to and fro. So it is sort of in the heart of southern Indian Ocean that this very intriguing and very interesting controversy has broken out. This is the stuff that spy thrillers are written around. And just to add a dash of masala to this, the Indian officer in charge of the Indian tech team is generally described as the mustachioed one, as the moochwala, right? So Sherry Singh said he did not quite remember who the Indian officer was. He says, Monsieur Mustache. And you can see that picture because Mauritian media has been picking these up. And this is a screen grab from Mauritian media.